Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. As of right now, there is only one perfect show on television or streaming or whatever it is that you watch stuff on. And that perfect show, in my opinion, is Glow. In a minute, we're going to be joined by Chris Lowell, who plays Bash Howard, the somewhat dim, but like every Glow character, incredibly complex person who is the producer of the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. Let's take a quick look at the trailer for season 2.
1, 2, 3. Glow! Oh, fuck. It's out of film.
Ladies, exciting stuff. Feels a little different around here. And we got a few men in the gym finally.
Woo! Hubba hubba.
All right, don't distract them. They have work to do.
I'm excited. Aren't you excited?
My costume still smells like beer and racism.
Was I supposed to wash these?
You have a good break?
Yeah. Just getting divorced. It's complicated.
Usually you do a lot better job of keeping your weird friendship stuff out of the ring.
Just hope she can keep up.
You're on that show, right? Glow, welfare queen. What'd you call my mom?
It's a wrestling show. I'm not the only offensive character. Everyone's offensive.
We have fans. I mean, the girls get letters. There's weirdos waiting outside for them.
Wait.
You're my favorite.
I can see that.
We're gonna be canceled.
I can't believe this.
I think this might have something to do with me.
That is how this business works.
It shouldn't be that way.
They gave a men's wrestling show our slot.
So you just let them do whatever they want?
Fuck no.
Fuck no.
What are we gonna do about it?
I say we do whatever the hell we want to do. Set the weirdos free and see what happens.
You want to be respected, you gotta make yourself useful.
I know what I'm worth, and I'm not apologizing to anyone.
Everything is gonna be hard.
I forgot to pick up my son at daycare today.
I don't want to make this show that way.
Who's ready to do this?
Look, I know this is gonna be hard. But I believe in miracles, and we are going to make this miracle happen.
We are the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling!
You want to wrestle with mommy? So when you're older, you can talk about it with your therapist.
Everybody, please welcome Chris Lowell.
Good looking, y'all. Hi, thanks for having me. Oh, this is nice.
First and foremost, what is it like to be on a show that has its cake and eats it all at the same time? There's no other show like this that has perspective, that has class about its subjects, but is also very funny, very over the top at times, and playing to a specific time period that could be dated as well.
Yeah, I think what's most impressive about what Liz and Carly, who are the creators of the show, have done is I remember reading the pilot and just thinking there was in order for them to stick the landing of creating a show that is so funny and irreverent and playful, but also has like such poignancy and depth. I remember thinking it was going to be it's like near impossible to hit that bullseye. And I remember we were about halfway through the first season. We watched the pilot, and it just blew my mind. I mean, I think they nailed it. It's one of the most impressive qualities of the show, I think, is that you get to see such great nuance and character development and a version of the 80s that feels really deep cut and subtle, somehow against the backdrop of this crazy over-the-top wrestling world. You know, I just couldn't, and it's so funny. I don't know, it just kind of blew my mind that they pulled it off.
Deep cut and subtle while and this is what I mean by having the cake and eating it at the same time.
Exactly.
Like deep cut and subtle while at the same time still being very
Right.
80s.
You still have crazy, I mean, look at, like, well, actually, this is everyone in their normal clothes except for, Gail. But the idea, is that you can have all the huge big hair, 80s ballad, training montage sequences, which is its own, I think, joy when you watch something that's set in that time period. But then you also get to have like what I think are just whether it's the sweatpant outfits, like these outfits, the clothes and the culture and the cultural norms that are, I think, a lot kind of quieter and under the surface are also able to exist on the show, which I think is a difficult thing to achieve. I frankly don't know how they do it.
When they first brought the show to you and pitched it to you, what were your first thoughts? Because I remember seeing the marketing for the show initially upon first season and being like, I don't know. Like, I'm not a particular wrestling fan, but even someone who I'll watch a movie about anything or a show about anything. Everything that I've usually seen about wrestling has been kind of like, the characters both in the ring and off the ring are over the top and really one-dimensional, and the wolf person is the wolf person here as well.
Yeah, I think that what Liz and Carly did, which is so ingenious, is, and I think it's the part of the reason the show is able to execute what we're talking about, is that it exists in two different worlds. There's the world within the ring, which gets to be loud and crazy and over the top and politically incorrect and ridiculous. And then there's the world outside of the ring, and that gets to be a lot more grounded. And I mean, I do remember my first episode in season 1, we go to like this beach house where I live, and I'm in, like an Elvis Presley costume, and we're doing cocaine out of a robot that I have, and I'm making these ridiculously over-the-top choices. And then I remember finishing that episode and going into the next episode and making some insane choice, and the director being like, well, let's not forget, it's a grounded show, And I was like, it's a grounded show? Like, what have I been doing? But I think they do such a great job at like tactfully massaging certain scenes to make it just have this really smooth ride. I just feel like it feels seamless.
Your first episode in the first season was like two or
I think
three,
it was
right?
3. Mm-hmm.
So had you seen the pilot by then?
No.
So were you, because I love this, because actors often, as much as they trust the creators, have no idea what it's going to turn out like. And if you're in an 80s costume and doing cocaine out of a robot and making big choices, that's a really terrifying place to be in.
Oh, there was a lot of Betty and I, right here. Betty and I will often say when we wrap a certain scene, we'll if we see playback of it, oftentimes one of us will just say, okay, well, I'm never going to work again. I mean, because it's so ridiculous. And then you see how they cut it together and somehow it works. No, for me, before the show came out, they asked me to come in and audition, and it was one of the, if not the single worst audition I'd ever had, and I completely misread the character.
Were you doing actual character stuff, or were you doing announcer stuff?
No announcer stuff, just character stuff. And all they had said about my character, because it wasn't in the pilot, I'd read the pilot script, and then when they described my character, they were like, rich Republican playboy who, will sleep with his own mother to get ahead. And so I went in playing it as this really grounded, subtle, manipulative, almost like a more conniving version of like Robert Redford and All the President's Men or something. Could not have been further from what I needed to be doing. And then I remember the casting director was like, no, it's more like, think like Biff from Back to the Future. And I was like, I need to leave. And then I think
you've never really been asked to play a part.
No.
That.
Normally I've been in comedies before, but I normally play the straight character, the straight man. I'm able to do. I'm usually a very cynical character, or like nice, kind of naive boy next door character. I don't normally play such an over-the-top, crazy psycho like I do on the show. But then
Bash is a psycho.
Bash is a psycho. My hair on the show deserves its own Emmy. Frankly, it's so insane.
I think one of the things about the second season that we see about Bash, though, is that he's not a psycho.
No, actually, one of the things you're right. One of the things that's I think especially
feel a lot more for him in season 2.
I think a big thrust of season 1 was getting the audience to understand this world and just giving you a brief glimpse at who all of these characters are, because there's 16 of us on the show. And then season 2, what makes it so much fun is having established the world, having established the character, they really get to watch us interact in our own private lives. And I think what Liz and Carly did to help keep Bash from becoming a complete cartoon character is to really dig into his backstory in a way that I think is really beautiful and complicated and emotional. And, as an actor, it's like the biggest compliment in the world to be given some really challenging material. It's intimidating, but I think it's also really flattering, and I really enjoy the ride that Bash gets to go on in the second season.
Well, we go from a kind of, if you will, a Biff-like character who is extremely confident about his status in life, because that's really all that he can think, to a person who is actually quite uncomfortable with their status and their background and where they're from. And that is what fuels so much of his energy and so much of his sort of faux confidence around everybody.
Exactly. I think this is a guy who his whole life has been given whatever he wants because he's this rich heir to a canned food fortune, and I think the stakes have never seemed that high for him. And then he finally does something with his life, which is produces the show, and so suddenly there's something for him to really work for and something that he can't just have because he wants it. And I think for the first time he starts thinking about other people other than himself, and he's not completely solipsistic. And then I think what's really fun about watching the arc for Bash in season 2 is oftentimes the audience knows more than he does. They're sort of seeing between the lines, and he's sort of so unaware of what's going on around him that maybe he doesn't even realize things about himself. It's good. I think the other thing that the show does really well, which is so hard, is to, we dive into things. There's workplace harassment. There's a lot of conversations, not directly, but I think thematically about misogyny in the workplace and
misogyny in general. I think
misogyny in general. I think, just the misogyny that sort of coded the 80s and still today. I mean, I think what's sort of scary about
the 80s are president right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry.
But yes, I think there is this real sense of I think they just do a really good job at building in a lot of layers for the characters to really explore. There's a couple of episodes, too, structurally, that are so impressive where they completely blow up the form the way we're used to seeing it. There's a couple episodes that just feel like they are completely their own entities. And I remember thinking, I think it's like episode 4 and episode 8 or something like that. And I remember seeing them and going to Liz and Carly afterwards and being like, are we only doing 2 seasons of the show? Because it feels like they're just like leaving it all on the field. Yeah. It has a real sense of like greatness to it in that way.
I will say in regards to those 2 episodes that I'm pretty sure I know which ones you're talking about, and we have to be cagey about these because the show is coming out on Friday. We don't want to give anything away. I would say one of the things that I love so much about the show is even when they do something wildly impressive structurally, unlike almost any other show or movie or artist out there, they will showcase how proud they are of what they're doing structurally and how proud they are of the thing that they're breaking. And in Glow, with the exception of maybe episode 8, right, which, I mean, is done cheekily and kind of sarcastically, the creators never feel like they're trying to show off by doing these structural things. It feels very, very particular to this story that they're telling.
That's right.
And it doesn't feel like, look, we did it all in one shot.
It's not a gimmick. It's not like we're going to do an episode in one shot for fun, or we're going to do a musical episode, because why not? It feels like we have a really interesting story to tell, and if we change the structure to this, it might way better service the story we're trying to tell. It all feels purposeful. It doesn't feel just to spice things up, which is really nice.
And the other thing that I love about Glow, and I was telling you this in the green room, is that unlike a lot of other television right now, as much as, and we could use your character as an example, as much as your character has an overarching story, you also have an episode or 2 that tell one story about you that then also serve that larger purpose for your story. But Glow is one of the few TV shows right now that is not afraid to also be episodic while at the same time serial.
That's right. It's not what I think is just a really difficult line to walk is I feel like so often you either expect a show to be completely independent, each episode is different from the next and you can just drop in, or you want every single episode or it's got to be one of those things where you have to start at season 1, episode 1 to understand what the hell is going on. And this show, I think, does a great job at giving you enough fulfilling episodic, independently episodic gratuity and fun and play, while also connecting the dots from one story to the next in a way that feels like when you get to the finale, you really feel the weight of what all of these characters have gone through, and it really comes together in a way that feels really organic.
And the characters are so well shaped and well rounded and defined that you can drop into any episode and kind of know the intentions and the objectives of each character.
That's right.
Oh, that's the producer. He's a dick. I get it. oh wait, but there's another layer that I'm suddenly getting here as well.
That's right. You don't have to have started from the very beginning, but at the same time, if you have, it only makes your experience watching the show all the more rewarding. But it's not a mandate.
You're a writer and director yourself. When you work with people like the creators of Glow, does that affect the way that you look at your own work and how you go about writing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll often, Liz and Carly are both playwrights, and so many of the people on this show are. And they just have an unbelievable sense of structure and the way an approach to character development that I definitely have sort of, there's been more than a handful of times that I've kind of walked into like a story meeting or heard them discussing something on set where I think normally actors, when they're doing it, they want to just know what's happening to them, like what their plot is for the next episode. And I think for me, it's more like, how are you able to hold all 16 of us in your heads and connect these dots in ways that don't feel obvious but also feel inevitable? I mean, they're just great storytellers.
What do you think being a playwright has to do with being able to sort of handle a show like this or really accomplish a show like this?
Well, I think, there's two things that I think really help it. For one is that there is the show within the show is this big stage performance. It's like the stage is the ring, and you're performing for this big audience, and I think there's a sense to that. But I think also really what it is playwrights, you have nothing but the words. So it just really makes you a master at just choosing the right words and the right stories to tell and the right time and the right dialogue, and not depending on all of these other visual elements to assist you. I think what makes the show so good at its core is the writing. It starts with the writing. You
can't hide with playwriting. You can't hide your structure.
That's right.
And you can't hide your sort of setup and punchlines that well. So great playwriting, I mean, essentially will hide it, but it's much harder to do it there than I think it is to do it in just TV and film and coming up in that background.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's just a much more naked form. And they're just stupendous writers.
What's your favorite thing that you get to do with Bash?
I love all the outfits they put me in because it's like Beth Morgan, who's our costume designer, I feel like just keeps trying to one up how hideous they'll make me look on the show, how ridiculous the clothes they'll put me in. And I'm really the only guy on the show. Mark Maron's character is pretty subtly dressed for the most part. He's wearing jeans and maybe a polyester sweater or some ugly sweater from time to time. For the most part, he's pretty toned down. So if there's any guys' costumes for Beth to blow out of the water, it's going to be mine. But the things that I really love, I love announcing. The way that typically goes on the show is the writers, they have an idea emotionally what's going to happen. They know that this character is going to lose to this character, and it's a metaphor for what's going on outside of the ring, and so they have a structure in that sense of what the structure is going to be of the matches, but they don't know exactly what the moves are going to be because they leave that to Chavo, who's the fight choreographer. So what happens a lot of times is they'll give me one or two zingers to kind of throw out, but then when we actually get there on the day, the fights are so much more elaborate, and so they'll oftentimes just kind of let me ramble. And
are they shooting you announcing while the fights are going on a lot of the time?
So typically what happens is I'll come in early and watch the rehearsal. I'll watch the ladies do the rehearsal. And when that happens, I'll just sort of, as I'm watching it, just start taking down notes and trying to brainstorm like this fun, crazy. I've always got these like note cards that I'm like throwing all over the place. And those are just like weird ad-libs that I've written.
Oh, that's so fun.
And it's super fun. So we usually shoot the girls first. They do the wrestling. And then when they come around on me, they'll just leave the cameras rolling and let me just go buck wild.
And are you trying to emulate good professional, because I don't watch professional wrestling, good professional wrestling announcers, or what are you trying to emulate?
Part of it is trying to...
Is he good?
I have no idea if he's good. I think it's more what I did, my sort of homework prior to shooting when it came to the announcing was watching the Glow documentary and seeing the announcer from that show, and it's more, to me, it's less any particular style of speaking and more just needing to communicate this almost fever pitch, rabid excitement for the form. It's allowing the character to become like a full-blown, die-hard fanboy.
Right.
And I think part of what's funny about the show, because it's such a ragtag group of misfits, is I don't think Bash should be that good at it. No. You know what I mean? I think he should be kind of as amateurish as the rest of the ladies on the show.
No, you are clearly playing, or Bash is clearly playing a part that he has seen somebody else
That's right.
play.
He's trying to emulate someone who is good at announcing, but isn't necessarily good himself, is how I think about it.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi, first, I hope the robot does reappear in the second season. I just love those scenes. And this just relates in general. What's it like working on a female-dominant show where the male characters like yourself and Sam either are jerks or buffoons?
Good question. I think, well, for me, I think what's been really helpful is I've just been lucky enough. I've worked on a lot of shows with strong female leads. I've worked with and for women for a long time. So in terms of the set environment, I don't really think twice about it. It just feels really natural and really organic, and it's a really supportive environment, which I really like. And in terms of the characters themselves, I think that if Mark's character and my character were solely being used as buffoons, solely being exploited as pure misogyny, I think that would be delivering the wrong message. I think that what they do much more maturely or elegantly is showcase the ways that men can be misogynistic without even realizing that they're being misogynistic, and not necessarily be full-on one-dimensional villains, but just sort of be naive to the way that they're making people around them feel, the power that they're exerting without even realizing it. And that's something that I think they explore even more thoroughly and brilliantly in the second season.
One of the things that they do in the second season that I like, which is it's that, and you can look at it in different layers, where there's the layer of like, oh, of course these men are like this, it's the 80s. And then there are layers of it where it's like, no, most men are also kind of like this too.
Yeah, I definitely think that
you get the exaggerated from the time period, and then the
that's right, and then I think exactly. I think it exists on two scales. There's definitely the sort of cartoonish, like from a mile away, misogynistic behaviorisms of certain characters on the show, and then there's these ones that are much subtler, and as a result, I think much sadder and more difficult because they're a lot harder to point your finger at and call wrong. And so in that sense, I think I just think it's the right way to be exploring that cultural difficulty. It's the right way to be approaching it because it's really getting into the intangible subtlety that makes it, I think, a lot more just sort of tragic or worth discussing. It really helps to highlight behavior that is difficult to highlight, I guess.
Well, it's not an attack ad or a tweet. It's a heartfelt exploration of something. Yeah. One more question.
Hi. I wanted to know if you were to go back in time to the 80s as the age you are now, what would your style be like?
Holy shit. Okay.
Hammer pants.
Yeah. No, hammer pants I feel like is 90s.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I feel like it would be... There's an outfit I wear in one of the episodes, which was... It's basically a suit, a black suit one piece that Beth got inspired by from watching this music video with David Bowie. And I remember being like, if Bowie can rock this, I'll rock this.
Is it sleeves up kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's sort of sleeves up, but it's literally like crazy shoulder pads, goes down here, and then it was actually what we did was I had a suit where I tucked the suit into my pants and then have an enormous gaudy belt on. I don't know, I feel like the thing that's so fun about the 80s is that the style was so absurd, you could kind of get away with anything, and I feel like I would have tried to get away with everything.
Do you think in 20 years we'll look back at our style now and say that that was absurd, or do you think everything's fairly plain?
No, I think we'll look back and be ashamed of ourselves. I think that's kind of inevitable.
So many ways. So many more ways
so
than
many
style.
more ways than one. Yeah. The clothes will be the last thing we're talking about when we're talking about like 2010 to 2020.
Chris, I love Glow so much. As I said, I think it's the only perfect show on television
Thanks
right
so
now.
much.
I watched all the new episodes, I think, in like a day. I couldn't stop watching it. The new season premieres this Friday on Netflix, right?
Absolutely.
June 29th. Chris Lowell, everybody, let's hear it.
Thank you so much, y'all. Really appreciate it.